at ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavelich and Jesse Martineau.
Welcome to the Me and Jesse podcast, everybody. I am Mark Pavelich, and with us today, of course, from the Grove, the big sexy Mr. Jesse Martineau, and all the way from the UK, everybody, the Outlaw, the one and only, and we are so happy he didn't suck out and take the early time. The one and only, Mr. Dan Hardy, everybody. Woo.
How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. Thanks for joining us so late over there. But that's awesome that you wanted to do it live. We appreciate that a lot. It's always been a live show, and we try to keep it live because, hey, we never know what happens. So welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. First thing I need to know is how much attention do you pay to the Euro Cup right now?
You know what? The only reason I noticed there's a difference is because there's more traffic on the roads at certain times. That is literally the only way I noticed. Like, I was out the other day and I'm like, are we back in lockdown? Is the pandemic started up again? I'm like, all of a sudden it's a ghost town and nobody's around, and all of a sudden there's an England game on. I had no idea. I really don't pay attention to it. I get invited to barbecues from time to time, but that's the only way I know this football match is on.
Well, you started doing martial arts when you were really young, around 5-6 years old. Is that correct? So
yeah.
So would you consider yourself that introverted kind of martial artist guy that studied it? So soccer, hockey, football, all that, nothing means anything to you except for martial arts. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay,
absolutely right. I mean, I got into hockey briefly because we have a good team locally, the Nottingham Panthers. I mean, you know, not quite as high a level as the guys that you'll be familiar with, but you know, certainly enthusiastic, and we get a few good fights in there. But yeah, for me, especially competing, it was always individual sports. I like the team aspect of training, but when it comes to competition, I'm in my own head too much to work with the team, I think.
Oh, that's interesting that you prefer team training, but when it comes to actual performing, leave it by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I like the camaraderie of the gym. You know, we've got a few guys fighting this week, and I enjoy the process of everyone banding together because they're going through the same kind of experience. But then for me, you know, there's something quite internal, quite introspective about combat sports. You know, you're in there on your own, and I think, you know, not only obviously you're facing your opponent, but without sound cheesy, you're facing yourself in a lot of ways as well. And, you know, it's much easier for me to go through that process without having to worry about whether the guy on the other side of the field or the ice is doing his job, you know?
You sound like our friend Robin Black, who is an analyst here for Bellator mainly. He talks about combat sports the same way you are, where he figures that if you examine it enough, you would unlock the mysteries of the universe by watching someone punch someone else in the face.
Yeah.
You know what? There are a lot of patterns, and the more I watch it, the more I see the patterns over and over again. And the way that one person's rhythm will play off against someone else's, there's a lot to be learned from it, definitely. You know, and the more you watch it, the more you see the patterns. I'm sure Mr. Robin Black is watching just as many hours of tape as I am, and
he is.
You get a bit stuck in the matrix after a while. Everything turns into numbers.
Yeah. Wow.
Mark always taught me when Mark tried to train me to box, and he'd always say it's like a video game. And I mean, it's one thing for me to hear it in your brain, but it does take someone special to understand and put those things together.
Well, what happened was that I don't look athletic at anything, but like nothing. Like you put a basketball in my hand, soccer, anything. But it's weird. The second you put boxing gloves on me, I look like people go, oh, he was a professional boxer. Or it's weird. It's very strange. People, oh, you want to play tennis? I go play tennis, and it's like, what's wrong with your friend? Like, why does he look like that when he's playing tennis? But everybody can attest. It's the strangest thing. When I trained UFC fighters, I would be their sparring partner at 40 years old for boxing, and none of them could hit me. None of them could knock me out. I used to tell them, please try. You know, like it was embarrassing. And then I tried to explain to them that your boxing was so horrible that your trainer is kicking the shit out of you in training and you're in the UFC, right? So what the strange thing about that was that I could only see things that way, like when you're boxing or martial arts. That's why when I see what you're doing, Dan, that's why I was always attracted to you, because my son told me when we started the show, he goes, Dad, did you know a lot of people follow you on Twitter? And I'm like famous people. And I'm like who? Like who? And he goes, Dan Hardy follows you, Dad. And I'm like, does he really? And so I went to check and I'm like, oh, I think we should start a sports podcast. You know what I mean? But it's funny when you talk to people like yourself, Dan, you do have that introversion of martial arts. That's why you are such an advanced commentary guy. So
right.
for us, sorry it took so long to get to there, right? But what I was trying to get to was I'm trying to skirt around the UFC today. I am personally. I know Jesse won't, okay? But I will, because I know how good you are. Like, it's not just with the fighting, but I know how you see things, right? And how you see things is so much different than listen, I don't want to be derogatory towards anybody. I can't even listen most of the time when people are talking, when the fights are on. And when you're on, you're analyzing it because you actually flew the jet. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, absolutely. And I think, I think the UFC's got a particular flavor and a particular brand. And I think they were always a little out on a limb, having me alongside them, because I don't fit in with the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
If you want me to talk about a fight, I'm not going to give you a 90-second,
right.
Oh my goodness, this is what's going to happen. Monster trucks, Super Saturday, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you for 45 minutes about the ins and outs of this technical game, because that's what really interests me. And what's been really interesting about this whole process. And I understand. When you're on commentary, when you're working for the UFC, or when you're doing UFC products, I'm speaking to an audience that are familiar with me and like what I do, but I'm also speaking to a big chunk of people that have got no interest in what I've got to say. So this parting of ways with the UFC and me going my own direction, it's allowed me to find my audience. And what's been awesome is that BT Sport have stuck beside me, and they've actually created my own product. We did have Open Mat. Now I have the Breakdown Show, which is my own product, and it's literally me on my own for as long as I like, talking about the fight that I want to talk about. And it's what I enjoy doing. I sit on the sofa in my house and just talk about martial arts.
But don't you find that so bizarre that, see, like my gift in life is I know greatness. I know people that have no talent. My dear daughter wanted to be a singer. She could sing. And I said, okay, honey, let me hear you sing. She sang, but she would never be big in singing. So I told her, I said, honey, you're not going to be that Beyonce. You're not. It's not going to happen. Why does it take so long, Dan, for people to figure out people like you?
Because when somebody wants an answer in 60 seconds, we talk for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's why, Yeah. You can take me in a soundbite and you can post the headline up, and it's not going to get the essence of what I've got to say, because it's, maybe I'm a little bit too wordy, but I like language and I like the exchange of conversation. So, if I'm talking about martial arts, I can't simplify it down into this is the biggest fight in UFC history, because there's so much more to it, and I like the story of people coming off losses. These are all things that are rather controversial. The UFC doesn't like to talk about losses. I think it's a big, it's a big learning experience for a lot of these fighters. And, I like to be able to celebrate that. It's a journey of martial arts, it's a different kind of thing.
Well, do you think that, I've storied my love and dislike of UFC over the years, because I think there's things they're missing on. And I really do believe that they're missing on the training of the next generation, because yes, I understand it's an entertainment thing. Yes, I understand that part of it. But if we're not teaching the next generation of viewers, what's going to happen when this one goes away? And the thing that we, in hockey in Canada, is a big deal. They made a mistake. They started to dumb down hockey, and what happened was an entire generation of fans went away because we understood more than everybody talking on television. So do you think that there's a place still that will happen, or maybe a shift that'll happen, that intelligence and that what you're talking about has a place to come back to?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it shows itself. For example, so I was doing shows. I was doing breakdown shows on BT Sport, and they would like to try and limit it to about 15 or 20 minutes because, as I said, I do like to ramble on a little bit. But with this new breakdown show, I said, look, with this first one, let me just do the show that I think the fans would like to see, right? Unfortunately, the first one wasn't geo-blocked, so we got to see it, and we got 260, 300,000 views. It got good numbers. And I don't even think BT Sport were expecting it to have that kind of audience. But if you look at the views on these shows, and even the ones that have been geo-blocked, they're up comparable with with other shows that BT Sport are putting out. Like, people want the detail, they want the nuance, they want the minor the minor stories that are going on between these fighters that are easy to miss, and easy to miss when you sit an octagon side. But I've watched these things over and over again. I'm finding it really interesting little things, and there are people out there that don't have the time to watch a 25-minute fight in slow motion 3 times. So let me do it for you. Let me show you the best bits. And there is an appetite for it because there is such beauty in mixed martial arts. If every fight's rock'em sock'em and whoever lands first is going to get knocked out, and it's all on the toss of a coin and the roll of a dice, like, we're completely underselling what's going on in there. Especially when you've got specialists like Israel Adesanya and Conor McGregor, people that can deliver a single punch to a single target and switch people's lights off. I mean, I've switched back over. I've been working with Glory quite a bit over the last few days, really getting into their divisions. And I mean, Adesanya is so special in mixed martial arts because of what he can do. But he's one of many sharks in that weight division when he was in Glory. Like, there are a lot of guys in there that have got incredible striking games, and people just don't know that it's going on. So that's one of my next projects, is to try and shine some light on Glory kickboxing.
Well, did I see the other day too, though? I saw you jabbing, and that's jabbing at 39 years old. Okay, so this was my thought process, because, like, I don't know if you know this, Dan, but I used to own the largest MMA show in Canada for 16 years. So what happened was, I can sense these things from even across the pond. So I see you jabbing this bag, and at 39 years old, your jab is already better than 90% of anybody fighting in the UFC. That's a fact. So why are you jabbing on the bag, and are you putting the chum in the water? For
boxing.
Because no, yes, of course, for boxing, because I know you like to kick people too, but your boxing was always slick, always sharp, and you already had the Carl Frosch movement, you had the Ricky Hatton movement in mixed martial arts. In fact, it was almost weird because no one, like in MMA, you saw straight back, straight in, straight back, straight in, straight back, straight in. Nobody cut off to the sides. No one did any head movement. It was, your head was right here. And I saw you snapping the bag, and I was like, is that from now? Because at 39, that shit's tight still. So I know these Paul brothers are picking these people that they're going to beat right now, but I think it would be a horrific mistake for them to call your name out. But at the same time, there is weight with your name at 39 years old to box one of these, I don't want to use any derogatory language on the show, but these morons, that I think you could knock one of out with a jab. I really believe that.
There are certain fights I would definitely consider, and any kind of combat sport. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a prize fighter, and Nate Diaz said it the other day. Like, I'll never retire. No. I had this conversation with Conan Silveira when I was at ATT last time, and chat with him, and he said the same. I'll never retire. It's like, it's not you don't retire from the mentality of a fighter. It's what we do, and I've probably thrown that jab 90% more times than most of the fighters in the UFC. But that's because I'm in this gym, every day working through those patterns. And when I'm not physically doing it, I'm rehearsing it in my head, or I'm teaching it to the guys at the gym. And, I've got a bunch of pros in the gym this morning. We've got 6 guys fighting this week. And we did jab patterns this morning. We did jabs, we did jab feints, we did jabs to the body. Really, really simple stuff. But from that, you create a whole game off the back of it. And, if I've got a guy with a good left hook or a good right hand, if I can give him a jab, he's going to find his way through the guard and knock that guy out. And, they're the things that I love to do, just to kind of fine tune people's games. But oftentimes the fine tuning is the basics.
Absolutely. Dan, we talked about, some of the other Adesanyas out there. I'm wondering why it's only a few people that are rising up, and there's like a lull in like exciting. I don't know if exciting is the right word, or entertaining people. I mean, there's the Conor and the Adesanya and that kind of stuff, but what's wrong with everybody? What's going on? Is it that some people decided, oh, I need to be like Conor on the microphone and forget the fighting part, or I need to be like Adesanya? And so what's going on? Why isn't there the rise of the next kind of like superstars? What's going on there?
I think they're out there, and I think that the superstars they're kind of few and far between. I don't think we're doing a great deal to cultivate them, if I'm honest, and say we. I think we're doing what we can. I think the people that have got the real power are the ones that are swaying the sport. They need to understand that fighter pay is also reinvestment in the industry. Not everyone's going to be an Israel Adesanya, but there'll be a few guys out there that have an understanding of what Adesanya does, but not be able to do it themselves. They're the guys that go and open up gyms, and they might not be top 15 MMA fighters, but they might be good enough to coach those next generation of superstars. It's a case of harvesting them. They're all out there, and one of those superstars could walk into an MMA gym or onto a hockey rink or onto a basketball court. It's a case of providing MMA in and around the places where these kids are going to be, and that's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a reinvestment in the sport in that way. I saw a really kind of disappointing tweet by Brian Kelleher the other day about looking to fight a YouTuber so he's not having to look for a job at Walmart. Like, we want Brian Kelleher to have his own gym. We want him to have 15 or 20 guys within the next 5 years that are on the Contender Series.
Correct.
That's where people are missing the beat. And then the guys that have already got millions in their pocket, they're not bothered about where the sport's going to be in 10 or 15 years because they've already made their bank.
No.
Do you think it's the fighters that have got to reinvest, unfortunately, and we don't have a great deal to reinvest in.
Do you think that it is time for a union or a ranking system like boxing would have?
I think it's time for something. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's time for something. I'm having a lot of interesting conversations in and around the background at the moment. Obviously, there's the class action lawsuit going on with the UFC that could certainly stir things up. There are several groups of very powerful, very, very wealthy people talking about new organizations and new platforms for MMA fighters to perform. I think Triller's really upset the apple cart. I think it's opened everybody's eyes. And we'll for as much as we can mock the YouTubers, they've kind of turned a mirror on the sport of mixed martial arts.
That's true.
You can't, Dan. You can't dog them right now. I want to dog them and I can't because what they just did. Look what they just did. They hacked the system. They said, what? And this kid, the Paul kid that actually can box a little bit, the younger one, he's the one now. I was chastising him when he first started, and I'm like, wait a second, this kid's gonna make so many people rich. That had no Woodley was defiant about the boxing until he started doing the mathematics and realized with a decent pay-per-view and everything, he could easily make about 1.2 million, 1.5 million on this next fight. And he's thinking to himself, I don't think this kid can really hurt me. So why wouldn't I do that? Because I never got paid that to fight in the UFC. And you know what? You can't even blame Woodley for doing it. Look at Anderson Silva just fought this weekend too. And he actually, out of everybody, he looked the best right now. He looked fantastic. Comparably speaking, who he was boxing against. And I was like, wow, this is the weirdest thing that's happening in the world right now. But can you blame Woodley? Can you blame all these people? Because when you hear people making comments, hey, I might have to get a job at Walmart, I'm not going to be the one to put down anybody that wants to make money like that. It's just not right.
No, and this is what's good about the whole Triller movement and these YouTubers boxing is that it has shown what money could potentially be made. Like when you've got the heavyweight champion of the UFC, putting tweets out like, hang on a minute, how come he's wearing big gloves and fighting for short rounds against guys that are too old? And it's just like all of a sudden it's taken something as ridiculous as the Triller circus to kind of make us all realize, oh, hang on a minute, someone's making loads of money here, and it's not the guys that are actually throwing punches. I can't blame Tyron Woodley for going over and doing that. I mean, and fair play to him, and obviously I hope he's successful. But it's not like it's not a competitive fight. As you said, Jake Paul's got some boxing skills, and Tyron Woodley's got a nitrous tank with about 15 punches in it. When that runs out, anything can happen.
Correct. Correct.
And you can't always knock somebody out with one punch in those big gloves. It does
No.
change things. It gives you a big shield to hide behind.
Yep.
I like the whole process. I think the only downside to it is that it lacks consistency for the fighters. That's why it's not a viable alternative, is because they're not consistent events where they can get consistent paydays.
Yeah.
You can get the odd payday here and there, but the reality is fighters want to fight,
Yeah.
But the other Paul brother fights Floyd, and Floyd says after, this is where we have to take Floyd now as not the great, like when people say he's the greatest fighter of all time and he's this, we can't say that anymore because he just fought at 44 years old, the other Paul brother who was 0-1, went the distance. And after the fight was over, he said, he's a better boxer than I thought he was. And can you understand? This kid's not a good boxer. Like we're not slow.
Yeah, but Floyd's
like,
about the show, though. Floyd knows the show.
Hence, we're all the real fighting people are going like this, like, oh my God, what's going on in this world right now that this is happening? But should someone like Dan Hardy have a fight like that for $1.8 million in a boxing match against the Paul brother? I think so. Why not? Right? Like 1.8 American dollars. Okay.
Well, no,
So,
pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But when I saw your jab the other day, I was like, most people that don't know go, oh, he's just jabbing a bag. That doesn't mean anything. And I'm like, wait a second. That's not your regular.
People want to see those cool pads going back and forth.
Yeah. I don't need to see the pads because the Floyd pads, the pads move, his hands don't. So that's, most people don't know that either. But what I'm saying is when I see you jabbing, I was like, wait a second, there's something left here, right?
Well, I saw an article as early as the end of May that you were considering a boxing return.
Yeah, I would absolutely consider it. I've had a couple of options put in front of me, but they're like 21-year-olds with some kind of TikTok following, and I'm just
not that. Yeah, not that.
No, I mean, I put a few names forward. I had a couple of promotions speak to me about potentially boxing, and this was a little while ago, and I'm looking through the free agents. I actually put Tyron Woodley's name forward as an option, but there were a few guys, but all the guys' names I put forward, they were UFC vets, or they were boxers or kickboxers, or people that had respected names. The truth is, I would rather be in the gym training other guys to be actual champions than to be fighting someone that I don't feel any desire to punch in the face.
Gotcha.
Whereas there are a few guys who I respect them and I know they've got a good game, and whether we play chess or grapple or box or fight MMA, I know it's going to be a good contest because I respect them. The idea. I mean, Nick Diaz is the one. I mean, if I could pick anybody, Nick Diaz would be my pick. I think Nate's got too much damage.
That would be fun.
But Nick and you would be phenomenal to watch.
And you're talking boxing in that one.
Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, anything from chess to gi, jiu-jitsu to badminton. I just think he'd be I think he's an interesting guy. I think the competition between us will be interesting. There are a lot of similarities with our personality. I think he's quite an introverted kid as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And and I think the whole Stockton 209 things are, it's a tough guy front. And I think we can getting inside that. There's a real interesting martial artist there, and I'd like to see him, in a fight where he's taking it seriously.
Well, we got Stockton against Nottingham, England, right? And there's bravado. If that doesn't say bravado, nothing does. Yeah. Nothing.
What is it with British fighters? Mark and I love British fighters.
Love.
And the bravado. There's something about when one of you guys walk out in the ring.
No question.
Is it when you're a kid? It's from walking down the street and yelling at someone, like if you're from New York, kind of idea. What is it that puts that into you guys?
I honestly, I just think it's the banter. It's the gym banter. Yeah. It's the back and forth with the guys. I mean, we absolutely brutalize each other in the gym, and if you can rise to the top in those environments, because obviously you can't banter if you can't fight in the gym. That's another thing. So you've got to have good banter to go with good fighting skills. And when you get to that stage where you've got the good banter and the good fighting skills, you've just got this kind of this kind of cheeky swagger about
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you know,
That's true.
and you know, and it's all about the fight at the end of the day. I mean, you know, like one of my favorites was always Chris Eubank, and he's got more swagger than most.
Oh yeah.
And I just loved the whole, you know, how like the whole thing was about ownership of the space. That's what Conor McGregor does so well.
Yeah,
you know?
ownership of the
He's
space.
taking over the space.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Wait a second. I'm just writing down ownership of the space.
That's really good. I like that.
I'm writing it down immediately. So,
But the banter, we call that breaking balls here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
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 So
But-
I mean, so that's just a lifetime of that, and you learn how to spar verbally as well as physically.
Exactly. Yeah, it keeps the mind sharp as well, and I think that's a big part of being sharp physically. You know, being reactive,
That's
being
really
able
good.
to think fast on your feet. You know.
well, when I owned the MFC for 16 years, I had Paul Daly. I signed him for 3 fights in my organization. When he came, it was literally like Moses, like this, like when he did a press conference, they talked to the first guy, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm really excited to be here. And, you know, I'm fighting Paul Daly." And Paul just got up on there and he just said, "Oh, for Christ's sakes, this guy's gonna get murdered. I can't. I just look at him. I can't stand looking at him. He just disgusts me in every manner." And I was like this. Eureka! You know, like it was so fantastic. And I said, Paul, you do whatever you want. Like you have a green light. He says, "Mark, can I say whatever I want?" I say, "Whatever you want." You just go. And he did. And people watched and people came, and it was like the circus was in town, and he can actually fight too, right? So it was a combination of, hey, I can talk some shit, but I can also fight, and you're gonna love to come and see me fight. And that's what happened. But it's not like everybody can pick their own shtick, but it seems like some guys are wondering why, you know, this guy's getting a fight or this guy's getting a fight. But when Paul Daly came, Paul's like, "When am I fighting next?" I go, "The next show." And then after that show, I go the next show. like you don't take a quarter horse and only go, you know, you go all the way with him, right? And he was fantastic. And I mean, there was just controversy constantly. Like there was never. He missed weight one time. He had to be taken to the hospital, right? And then he's tweeting from the hospital, and then but he still did the fight, but he didn't make the weight. And he's like, "Oh, you know, like just crazy stuff went on." But that crazy stuff brought attention to the organization. And you know, I don't understand why guys don't understand. Like, stop fighting, like talking in your gym that you want to kick the shit out of the guy. Go on Twitter, go on Instagram stories, and pick your own style of how you want to shit talk. But maybe they all should go train in England at Dan's gym to get that training
a little bit.
Just to learn a little bit on how to do that correctly, because that's so true. Like, if you can't,
Dan, do you think that the UFC punishes guys that can't verbally spar?
I certainly think you're slowed down if you're not as
You're slowed
marketable.
down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Leon Edwards is a good example of that. You know, he doesn't. I mean, you know, I think the conclusion is this: you've either got to be a finisher or a talker, or both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. You can't not talk or not finish, and I think that's held Leon back a little bit because, you know, and Usman was the same. He kind of cruised in third gear up to the top.
Yeah.
You know, I think some guys, they keep a bit in reserve until they get to that championship status, and then, you know, the high pressure fights bring it out of them. And I don't think we've quite seen that yet from Leon. But the problem is that he's struggling to get there in the first place because he doesn't have the chaps and he's not getting those highlight reel knockouts. And then on the flip side, Darren Till, who joined the UFC later, who's awesome with his trash talking, and he's always trying to get inside people. I mean, the stuff with Marvin Vettori going back and forth has been hilarious, you know. But that's what the fans like, and that's you know, the example again. You know, go back to Triller. But we're talking about YouTubers. The reason people are paying to watch them fight is because they're invested in their journey, not invested in whether they're 50-0 and they're the best fighter of all time. That's the old train. We're not interested in that anymore. Like, the essence of martial arts is the journey, and you can't invest in someone if you don't talk about the whole process. And you know, that's what I think the YouTuber thing is offering at the moment.
I absolutely agree. I'm big into Formula One, and they changed a couple years ago with young buyers bought them, and they went about the story. They made everything accessible. The politics behind the scenes are like half the fun before the race. Like, and so what you're saying, like, I totally get that part, because I think that's what has to happen. You watch an NFL game and there's story after story about players who you grew up down the street with nothing, and you learn, In UFC, it's the same kind of thing. You see a guy punching a bag with the story for a bit, and then they walk out, and that's as far as it really goes. But there's human beings attached that we want to know about, and the more we get attached to them, the more we want to watch them, isn't it?
But Jesse, could you imagine if they were in Dan's gym watching the 6 guys that were fighting this weekend, wherever they were fighting? I don't care what shows they're fighting for, and they were showing them all shit talking each other in training.
Yes,
that would attract the generation that we're looking that we're looking for in MMA, right? And what's boxing done? He's your guy, biggest promoter in boxing right now. What did he come out and do? Eddie Hearn, he wears a nice suit. He talks well. He looks well. He doesn't swear on camera. He doesn't use profanity. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't use profanity. He dresses fantastic, right? He looks. He's the English James Bond. He's promoting boxing.
James Bond is English.
Well, I know, but I'm saying the boxing promoter, right? So what does he do? He all of a sudden, I got people that are like in their 20s asking me, "Hey, Mark, did you see that fight the other night?" And I'm like, "What fight?" Yeah. And they're like, the boxing one. I'm like, "You watched that?" And they go, "Yeah, I did." "Hey, Mark, do you know Eddie Hearn?" And I'm like, "Wow, this is interesting. Very interesting how Eddie Hearn's flipping this, not the fighter, the promoter. He's acting in a certain way, and he's cool with everybody. Do you notice that? He's with Billy Joe Saunders. He's with Canelo. He's with everybody. He's promoting fights. He's making money. But what he's done now is he's put this persona out there where it's basically people are attracted to him and to watch what he's doing."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's easy listening, isn't he? It's comfortable to listen to. There's nothing abrasive about him. And you can tell he just generally enjoys the industry that he's involved in. And he knows the industry that he's involved in as well. I mean, that shows when someone doesn't really know and they're not really interested. Right. You can tell he lives and breathes boxing, even though it's made him a lot of money, he would be doing it regardless. He's just fortunate that he's found the money end of the sport, But yeah, I think there's lots of interesting things happening right now. I think DAZN are doing great things. Yeah. I think Glory are doing great things. I mean, they're doing their own pay-per-views right now. And like, there's even in the world of professional grappling. I mean, Polaris is coming up very soon, and I know that's been delayed a month because of the pandemic. But they're doing amazing things as well, and I think there's an appetite for that. People are understanding the grappling arts a lot more. Mixed martial arts has a trickle-down effect to everything, doesn't it? And we should all really be supporting one another.
But do you think at one time or another, if there was someone that had the bravado to take kickboxing, you remember when K1 was out? When K1 was at his height, the problem was no one could speak English at that time that owned K1. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a problem in the North, like in the North America market and things like that. So what I'm saying is that like it was an 80% knockout ratio at that time. Like people were getting dummied in K1. Now, I thought at one point, my son and I were talking, going, man, this is probably the most exciting sport. We're watching K1 more than we're watching MMA. And we own the biggest show in the country in Canada. And we were watching more like at that time, K1. And I thought, why isn't anybody taking this farther? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think a big part of it is, like you said, there's the limitation in the language barrier, and that's not about educating the fans and getting translators in and subtitling stuff. It's about expanding the grassroots of the organization, Like for example, Glory, right? And Glory are really, really big in Europe. They need to be bigger across the world, but it's getting there. But the way to do that is to find athletes from around the world. Bring in some Canadian stars and some. I mean, they've got great South American fighters. There's some really, really good Brazilian fighters. There's some fighters from Suriname. So like there are certain areas. Morocco have got good fighters. Tunisia have got good fighters. But like in the UK, I can think of maybe 5 or 6 guys total that are good kickboxers and Muay Thai. And they're spread across, like we've got Haggerty over in one championship who's incredible, but it's kind of fractured. And we need to celebrate these athletes more. And, guys like us that have, got platforms, we can turn the light on these more local fighters. I think that's a big part of it is understanding we'll play a role in promoting the sport and the local fighters as well and getting behind them.
Let's talk about your career for a minute. Like, what was your favorite knockout?
Well, I mean, there were 2 clear knockouts in my UFC career. I would say my second one against Dwayne Ludwig was my favorite. Not for any other reason other than because that was the punch I picked to knock him out with. Like, that was the setup I chose, you know, because I knew he had a habit of pulling his hand away from his chin to catch. I mean, you know, poor old Jonathan Goulet ran straight onto a straight right when he fought Ludwig. You know, he's got a very fast snap rear hand, but he also reaches for a jab, or at least he used to. I mean, he maybe not so much anymore, but like I pumped the jab and saw him reach for it, so I knew that there was a doorway that had opened. Like, the Roy Markham knockout was awesome because it was co-main event in London.
That's right.
But that was an adaptation in the moment. I expected to catch him on the split cross, and we both missed the right hand, and I caught him on the counter left hook. So that's, you know, that was it's nice because it was an adaptation in the moment, but I like a well-laid plan coming to fruition, which is what the Ludwig one was.
So when you're training, when you're going through your training process, how in depth are you visioning the fight? How much are you saying this will set up this? How deep do you go? Because it seems like there's a lot of variance between fighter to fighter about this.
Yeah, there is, but I think that's partly down to the level of maturity of the fighter, of the experience they've got and their background. And I also think, I mean, you know, and I don't mean to in any way, you know, poke fun, but on one side you've got Israel Adesanya, and on the other side you've got Marvin Vettori. Yeah. And only one of those guys think they both have the same comprehension of striking.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Like, Marvin Vettori doesn't see the difference between the two, but Adesanya clearly knows that he's running the most advanced operating system, whereas you know, Marvin Vettori is probably a few years behind of comprehension. Yeah, but it's like a language that you don't understand. If you don't understand it, you don't know it exists. Yeah.
It's like a dog whistle. Yeah, it's the same. But it's the same language that Anderson Silva has when he fought Weidman.
Exactly.
And you know what's funny? Weidman knocks out Anderson Silva, and everybody goes, "Oh wow, he knocked out." And let me explain this to people at home. If they fought 100 times, Anderson Silva would win 90 of the 100. Out of the 100 times, he would win 90 times. People don't understand. He's so advanced in his striking, and Israel's going to get in trouble like this too if he keeps doing it. Sometimes they get bored. They're bored of fighting Weidman. They're bored of fighting Israel. Like, you know, Vettori, like, he couldn't be any more basic with his striking. It was so basic. And Israel's kind of like sitting on the fence, and he kicks off the fence, and he's kind of bored. He's just, you know, and they cracks him, and he moves away, cracks him, moves away. You know, Anderson got knocked out because he did that, because he was so like, oh my God, this guy can't hit me, so I have to do something. And then he ended up getting knocked out, which was unfortunate. But we just saw the other day, he just fought, what's his name? Duran Jr. Yeah. And
Hugo Chavez Jr.
Chavez Jr. And he did well. So, you know, it's funny to see, because people don't understand, like Israel too. There's sometimes in the fight, he looks like he's getting bored of who he's fighting.
Well, I mean, for some of these guys, it's like driving at 20 miles an hour, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
They need that advanced stimulus. You know, it's like the thing is, you know, you think back to Anderson Silva being a great example. There was a point in his career where he didn't really feel like mixed martial arts was the challenge for him, and he wanted to box Roy Jones, and he was locked into a contract and wasn't allowed to. And he had a couple of real stinkers. I mean, was it Damian Maia and Talis Latus?
That's right.
They were just awful fights, and that's because he just didn't want to be there, you know. Right. And then you're exactly correct with Chris Weidman. Same example with Leon Edwards this weekend against Nate Diaz. Everyone's like, "Oh, I told you Nate could beat him." I'm like, "Yeah, but if they fought 100 times, like, that happens maybe twice, maybe 3 times in 100 fights. It's because Leon was bored. He took his eyes off the prize, and he was cruising in third gear to the final bell.
You're right.
You know." It's like, that's the reality of it. It's like, I had a fighter in the gym the other day, and he's fighting this coming week, and he is electric when he's on the money. But if he's fighting someone, if he's sparring with someone that he feels like he can handle, he kind of cruises, and then he does silly things. And I'm like, you need to be switched on, even if you feel like this person is 2 or 3 levels below. Sometimes the risk. I mean, you know, GSP said this about Matt Serra. You know, the risk when you're fighting someone that's considered to be so much lower than you in the rankings is that the risk is so much greater. You know, if I'd have gone in there and knocked GSP out, like, oh, that would have been a huge upset. Same with Matt Serra, it was a huge upset.
That's right.
It's easier to fight someone that is far more competitive because you're far more switched on, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. But you said it before too. It's like, why don't they want to shut it down in the first 20 seconds? Then what is it? Why play? Aren't we looking for the knockout?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think, I mean, it's not. Although someone has a good command of striking, I mean, the thing is with Leon, I think in the fourth round, I think towards the end of the fourth round, Leon had accepted that he wasn't going to be able to knock Nate out with one clean shot. Yeah. Like, he landed his straight left, 4 times in that fourth round, 3 or 4 clean times. Every time I was like, oh, how is he still standing? Yeah. But I think he kind of got to the stage where he accepted that maybe he wasn't going to be able to put him away. Now, I agree with you. If he was one of my fighters, then I would be giving him additional tools to be more effective at different ranges with different targets. And I do think a solution can always be found and a finish can always be instigated. But that's down to the individual fighters. And the unfortunate thing is, you know, when you have a fighter that's the level of Leon or Adesanya or McGregor or whoever, it's very difficult to find someone that can upgrade that operating system because it's already so advanced. And the majority of the people around them, they're specialists in one particular area. You know, I mean, sometimes you get a really good partnership, say Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn, for example. I think Danaher and Faraz make a very good partnership as well. But at the moment, it seems that you have to have 2 good coaches that work in tandem to really finely tune someone. I don't think that Adesanya's found that other counterpart. I think he needs a good grappling coach to complement what's going on at City Kickboxing.
Growing up, who were the people that you looked up to in combat sports of any type? Who were the ones that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, you know, the obvious one, not necessarily combat sports, but just all round general inspiration is obviously Bruce Lee. You know, I mean, I watched Enter the Dragon on loop every day. But as far as actual competition, I mean, it was limited to what I could get access to. I was a big fan of obviously Chris Eubank, Nigel Benn. I preferred the lighter weight fighters. Julio Cesar Chavez was always one of my favorites. Just I like that heavy front foot style. Ramon Deckers, I would watch as much Deckers as I could possibly get. I would occasionally get my hands on the occasional old Muay Thai fights, you know, Diesel Noy or someone like that, and I would pick up little pieces from those. But for the most part, it was boxing I could get my hands on. There wasn't a great deal more around than that. So I would just I'd really get into boxers. But then, you know, when MMA arrived and when I started, I mean, I think I watched my first UFC event. I was 17, just turned 17. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh well, this is a whole new thing. This is everything. This is incredible. And then that opened up a different world to me entirely. But you know, up until that point, it was a lot of kickboxers. And Ramon Deckers has always been one of my favorites. I learned so much from him. Going into my old training camps, I would watch a lot of Ernesto Hoost. I'd watch Vanderlei Silva just to embody that lunatic vibe. You know, I watched a lot of old Dan Gable wrestling as well. You know, whatever I could find with Dan Gable, and even some stuff like some Pretty Boy Roy Shaw. You know, on YouTube you can find some really old videos of these old crazy, you know, unlicensed boxers boxing in circus tents in a farmer's field somewhere, and you know they've got good technique. And what's nice about those earlier boxers is that was before the sport had become adapted for the athletes with the fancy gloves. You know, these were guys that still had conditioned hands.
Yeah, that's right.
And would use a lot of elbows and head work to get the fights, including a few headbutts from time to time.
Well, I love that. I mean, you are a true, like, would you say you're a true student of fighting?
Fighting.
I would like to think so. Yeah, I would like to think so. I mean, you know, I don't do anything else during my day. You know, my gym is literally right through there. I've got about 400 pairs of boxing gloves, all of which have been tried and tested. And you know, I live in there most of the time. It's my favorite room in the world. I've got my library in the other room, which is probably about 1,500 books on martial arts from around the world.
Wow.
And then as far as fights, I mean, I would probably be underestimating if I say I watch 3 hours a day of fights.
Wow. So this literally consumes you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's everything I do. You know, my girlfriend's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We go back and forth constantly having conversations about stuff, and Like, we'll watch the same fight and then have a chat about what we saw. And I'm at the gym in the morning. I've literally got floor plans here for a new gym that we're looking at right now.
Wow.
Love it. I live for it.
What about the one yachting experience? I have to ask. I can't even see you on a yacht, and I know that you did it. You yachted, right? Is that not true? Like, how do I know what the hell it is, right? But what I'm saying is, I know you yachted, and I'm like, I was reading the bio, and I'm like, no, that can't be right. Like, you were like, is it considered a coxsman? Were you a coxsman? Is that what it was called?
No, I've got enough sea miles to get my skipper license.
Oh, Jesus! Like, what don't you know, everybody? What don't you know? Like, skipper license.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing that came out of nowhere, to be honest. There's this thing called Clipper Race, and they do this round the world yacht race, and they have sort of 12 vessels that are crewed by amateurs, people that don't know how to sail, that learn very quickly. And they either do, a leg of the race or the whole thing. And they asked me if I would join a leg of the race. So I did London to Rio. So we sailed down the Thames on the Tower Bridge. It was 28 days at sea. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But it was, that was more of a psychological test for me. I watched a documentary a few years ago where a guy got stranded at sea, and I just thought to myself, how helpless would I feel? The one thing with martial arts is we equip ourselves to not feel helpless.
Yeah.
And then there are some moments where you just can't avoid it. And that was one of them. And I needed to be in that environment where I was like, right, we've got to work as a crew. We've got to figure it out. We had a severely broken arm on the boat. One of the guys broke his arm, both bones in his arm, tore underneath his arm. And we were 12 days out from Rio. We couldn't get a helicopter to him or anything. Wow. We had to reset his forearm at sea and stitch him up. Jesus. And I don't have medical training, but it's it's what we do. We're actually on the phone to paramedics in Canada explaining what we have to do.
You're joking? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
We had a guy on our show, Dan, named Laval Saint Germain, and he's the only Canadian to hike up Mount Everest without oxygen. And the reason why we brought him on the show was not because he just did the Everest thing. He rowed from Canada to France, rowed a boat down the Atlantic Ocean 53 days.
From Canada to France.
To France. And when I saw the video of it, I almost threw up. Like, I was just my anxiety went through the roof. Like, that you were talking about it. When you were talking about now being on the ocean from where you are to Rio, 26 days. I want to throw up, not from the boat, but just from the feeling of, oh shit, there's nothing, and just you in the water. And I got to know more about that because I'm fascinated with what you're talking about there, because I know that it would freak me out to the max, just to the max, man. Like, oh my God.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I'll give you one more then. I'll one up myself because this is something that you should check out. He's a friend of mine. His name's Ross Edgley, and he swam around the UK. He spent 158 days swimming.
Jesus Christ, man, that's insane.
Honestly, the story. I did a podcast with him. The stories that he has, getting jellyfish tentacles wrapped around his head, getting pulled into whirlpools. It is stuff of nightmares.
It's death.
And his tongue was disintegrating, falling apart because of the seawater. Literally 158 days swimming, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, constantly.
Amazing. We're getting that. We got to get this guy too.
No, but you see what I'm saying? That's the trippy stuff. Unfortunately, not too many people know who he is. And same with we had Laval Saint Germain. The guy, he was on our show and people didn't know who he was. And I felt horrible because I was so geeked excited about having the guy that climbed Mount Everest with no oxygen. And he told the story how when he was walking up, Dan, he saw the other Canadian guy dead. Who tried.
His body was still there.
His body was still there, frozen. And that was the other guy that tried it without oxygen. And he was like, oh shit, I better get moving. Right? And there wasn't too many selfies at the top of Mount Everest because he had to come back down because he was dying. And he made it. And his name is Laval Saint Germain. And I'm like, when you were telling the story about that, I was just like, I don't know what it is, but I'm a legit, I don't have one picture with a famous person in my life, except for Mark Cuban when we signed a deal together. But the second I see Laval Saint Germain, right, because he's coming to where we live, I'm going to grab him in a headlock and take a picture with this maniac that had the mental fortitude to climb up Mount Everest with no oxygen, the only Canadian to do so, and someone that swims 158 days. Think about that, around England. What is in that person's mind? You're lucky we didn't teach him how to do MMA, because he would have killed everybody. He would have killed everybody. Yeah,
I've told him, give me 6 months. The guy's an absolute monster. Look him up, Ross Edgley. He's an absolute beast. But that's the beauty of these people, and the chap you were just talking about. They're not doing it for anybody else. They're doing it for themselves, and that's that's why we invest in them, is because they're not 100 selfies. Like Ross Edgley's not backstroking through the through the North Atlantic taking photographs. It's not about that. It's about themselves against against whatever their challenge is. He's always doing crazy things. His next challenge, I think, is to swim around the Arctic. He's an absolute maniac.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Man, that's bananas.
I'll get him into MMA.
Yeah. Could you imagine? He would kill people. He would be, he might get disinterested, but you're not going to it's the mind. We always talk about mindset. After a while, everybody knows how to jab. Everybody knows how to kick. Everybody knows how to knee. Pretty soon, you'll learn a little bit of jujitsu. You know not to get choked out. You know not to get armbarred or triangled. But the thing that always bounces back at people is mentally people break. You can visually see it in the ring. You can see it in the cage. You can see it in everything. You could tell the moment. The average fan cannot tell. Anybody that's been in the game, as long as I have or Dan has, or most people that are commentating MMA that pay attention, can see the moment someone folds, the moment they break. And these people, like the gentleman you were talking about in the Laval Saint Germains of the world, they break, but they break where you can't see them break.
That's that other operating system we're talking about.
Your tongue is disintegrating, swimming around England, and the guy keeps going. You understand what that means, people at home? Like that's insanity. Like not insanity. That's just another level of consciousness that 99% of the world doesn't have. That's the Israel Adesanya striking skills. The toughness version of that, and we're all on Marvin Vettori level right now, looking at those guys, thinking, my goodness, like at least we can comprehend that exists when we see him swimming through the ocean for 158 days. Yeah, oh man, yeah. You know what I'm doing tonight, eh? Like there's nothing that's gonna succeed after this show is over. I'm looking this guy up. I'm just gonna sit by my fire pit, geeking out, watching him swim around England for 158 days. Jesus.
Well, Dan,
he's amazing. He's got some good books out as well.
Oh, definitely.
We really want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's you are like you and Robin Black. I mean, when we had Robin Black on the show too, like you guys. I love MMA, but you're talking like you could. I know that it's like you had to lower the operator system to talk to me, but we appreciate that because it's important. But I just really am hoping that the world can kind of grab on to the higher level of stuff, and that the next generation is even smarter and smarter and smarter. Even the fans smarter and smarter and smarter. And you remember the days when people would go to the ground and people would boo because they didn't understand what was happening on the ground. So, but now going to even deeper, like why is this happening or why is that happening? And so you're one of the pioneers in that, and you are, and it's an important role. And I think through combat sport history, you'll be remembered as one of the pioneers of getting people smarter about this sport.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. If I can help somebody understand a little bit of what they're watching, I'll be a happy person.
That's awesome.
Well, this episode will never die. So one thing, when we started the podcast, we knew a long time ago, people are like, oh, this is going to be crazy because, you're going to see this episode, till you're on the next time. And you're going to be like, didn't I do that with those Canadian guys like a long time ago? And people keep saying that to us now because we have guys from the NFL, we have guys from the UFC, we have guys from the NHL hockey. But the same underlining factor of everybody we have on the show is, Dan, you're in a very select group of people that can carry a tune for an hour straight, which means like people go, oh, Mark, like, no offense, but I know George St. Pierre. I know everybody in the MMA world. And they go, well, George is one of the greatest fighters of all time. But could you imagine being on the show for an hour? No. Can't happen. One of the greatest hockey players in the world lives in our city. people are like, Mark, he get him on your show. I'm like, it's not, he's the greatest one of the greatest hockey players in the world, but he can't talk like this. He can't express himself for 1 hour. And what I'm saying is that's what makes our show so difficult, because we have to find guests that can do that. And
you could go for 6 hours about this easily.
Oh, I've always got too much to say for myself. I have. That's a fact. That's what the UFC fans have learned over the last few years. Is I've always got something to say for myself.
but look at all the great things. Look at all the great things that came from England. All the great things. Okay, musically, boxing, MMA, just crazy stuff. All the people from England go, oh, I want to go to the United States. You know what Canadians say? We want to go to England. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because the music. Forget about that. Forget about the fighting, everything. But the music, and right now the boxing pandemic of English it's a pandemic. And it's not stopping. When you got people talking about now, they're not even talking about right now. No one's even talking about Deontay Wilder in Canada. They're talking about Tyson Fury and why we're not seeing the fight. But nobody wants to see in Canada Deontay Wilder fight. Nobody. They want to see Tyson Fury, and we're talking about two English boxers fighting each other in Canada. It's crazy.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's good because, English heavyweight boxing a long while ago, the likes of Lennox Lewis and Frank Bruno, the greats, they carried heavyweight English boxing for a long while. Now we've got, obviously Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua and stuff. It's exciting again. And, DAZN are doing good things with it. I think the boxing world's coming on. And I think MMA's getting there, and I think our responsibility right now is to keep upgrading it and make sure we've got a few more champions coming out of here. We've certainly got the knowledge now, and we're working on building the facilities. That's what I've spent my day doing today. So we're getting there. We'll win this battle for sure.
What's going to be the name of your new place, Dan? You're going to just keep the same name, or are you got a new name, or what are you doing? Come on, tell everybody. Give us a.
It's going to be the Rough House. It's going to be the Rough House.
No, Rough House. Okay.
Yeah, it was the old gym name. Paul Daly and I, we fought
That's
at
right.
the Rough House. And, but when we opened the new gym, we thought it might be a bit strong for some of the beginners. So we went with Hardy Walled MMA. And it's, I like it because it's our names. But for me, Rough House is our family name. That's what I want the gym to be called. And this is going to be a super gym. Like we've got everything that we need in there, from cryogenics and a climbing wall to a massive matted space and a ring and a cage, and all of the information and equipment that we would need to build a UK top team.
Well, hopefully they do a show there. That's what I want to watch.
Oh yeah. I've got that in the pipeline as well.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I know it's late there, but we really appreciate it. And we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, guys. I'll definitely speak to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Dan Hardy, everybody.
Wow.
Awesome.
You can keep that going. You can keep it going forever. Awesome. Yeah, I told you when we started the podcast, my son tells me, he goes, "You don't know, Dad, how many people follow you on Twitter?" And I'm going, "No, I never really
Dan was
checked."
one of those guys.
Dan was one of those guys, and I'm like, why would Dan Hardy follow? Because I didn't know him from the MMA world. I knew him
because he's friends with Paul Daly, isn't he?
Yes, and that's probably what happened, and it's really cool. But I really wanted Dan on the show, and I think, listen, what's great about our podcast, and I'm going to say this today, you and I aren't looking for a press pass. Okay, so I'm gonna say that on the show today. I don't give a shit.
I'd take one if they gave it to me, but I don't think you're gonna give it.
Jesse, you go get a press pass, okay? You go get a press pass for the UFC. You go get one for the NFL. You go get one for the NHL. I could give a rat's ass. I don't want to go to any of them. All right. So that's why you're going to get the truth from our podcast once and for all. That's what people have to understand, and how Dan Hardy, what he did. And I was surprised you didn't bring it up, but the Herb Dean incident, you can look it up.
I know. I mean, my thoughts of Herb Dean are very clear. Herb Dean's almost killed. He almost kills someone a show.
Yeah, per show. Yeah. So, and he almost had in my organization. He made multiple. He refereed in my organization, and I was baffled on how many.
No, I think Dan. I should have brought it up, but Dan. No, man, I didn't. But Dan, I mean, he was very adamant, and he's right.
Yeah,
he's right. Why can't we call out people?
I don't know.
That's part of an issue that we have as a society. No, this guy is supposed to protect the fighters, right? That's what they're supposed to do.
And let's talk about nobility for a second, which in MMA, for some strange reason, Dan Hardy says to him, Herb, you're making a huge mistake. And they get in an argument, right?
Yeah.
And then the problem is that shows Dan's side of being a trainer, a fighter, not just a commentator.
No, yeah, it's
right?
not a schmuck that's just.
And can you imagine? I'm going to say this today. As I said, me and DW are okay. Okay, I have no problem with him whatsoever. But how many times he's shit talked referees and talked down upon them? No problem.
Yeah,
he's allowed to.
Yeah.
But he's allowed to. He owns the largest MMA organization on the planet. But if you do that in the NFL, NHL, NBA, all these other organizations, you're fined. You're fined.
Yep.
Huge amounts of money. End of story. So this is this is what I'm trying to explain to people at home. The differentiation between there has to be a separate organization running MMA than the UFC running MMA, which means you have a WBC that runs the fight that's coming out right now.
Right.
You have the WBO, WBA, you have them running the boxing, right? And you're fighting for that title.
Yeah.
MMA has to become the same way, because what Dana White's talked about Mazzagatti and all these other people and talked all kinds of shit to these people. He did it. He got away with it. There was no repercussions from any commission for him doing that. That's crazy. But if he was separate from that, yes, the referees are coming from the Nevada State Boxing Commission. They're coming, but Herb Dean is technically a UFC referee.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They only use certain ones.
Yeah, but he's like, if they fight in California, he's going through their commission, but he's a UFC referee.
Yes.
You shouldn't have a UFC referee, if you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
It should be non-existent. And that way
he put, what was the guy, Yamamoto?
Yep, Yamamoto.
He sidelined him.
Yeah.
Right?
How can but you can't sideline an official. You can't sideline an official.
Dana did. He's not coming back. He's not coming in here right now.
But you get what I'm saying? In NHL, if you don't like a referee that made a bad call, hey, the game was horseshit yesterday with Montreal and Vegas.
Officiating has always been one of my huge sticking points for pro sports because of lack of consistency, which is it is atrocious. And I wish that there was more people getting public. Hey, those refs are making a lot of money too.
They are now.
They need to be called out.
Yeah,
I don't see why it's a big deal that they don't.
But you can't. You see in NHL hockey.
No, you can't. You get fined. NFL. But I think last year, I could be wrong most, but I think last year there was the most fines to head coaches for talking about officiating.
They couldn't stop.
Because it was atrocious.
Yep.
You didn't know week to week what was a pass interference, what wasn't. It was changed every day. And so, the only sport that I think can get away with it is baseball because of the strike zone. And it's like every, this ump has a big strike zone, this one doesn't. And so that's the only one the other sport has to be dialed in.
But you get kicked out right away, right? So in baseball, you argue, you kick dirt on the umpire, whatever happens, and then they kick you out of the game. And we don't even hear about if they get fined or not after.
Well,
but
they probably do. But
probably do. But baseball's more like forgiving when it comes to that. But, it's a problem in the sport when the referee's associated with the organization, regardless of any sport. That shouldn't be allowed. Just my 8 cents.
Next week.
Did you see though?
What?
Carl Nassib, first NFL player in history, active NFL player in history, came out gay today.
Yes, I saw that.
So people have came out gay after the fact, but not an active player. He plays for the Raiders. He played for the Bucks. Carl Nassib came out today, and coming out gay is not a big deal anymore, but coming out gay in the NFL, that's a big deal.
Well, and you still don't see that a lot.
No, you just saw it for the first
time, actually.
First time. Right. Active player, not someone that played or, was in the NFL, then went to the CFL or whatever the case may be. He is the first. I could bet a lot of money on this. He's the first to come out gay in the NFL.
Yeah. No, active, they said it's
active player.
Active player. Yeah. Next week we have Alan Jobin.
Yes. Just retired from the UFC.
Yeah.
Just retired.
He's a model too.
Model. He works for ESPN.
He's like Oh, you see his picture in the thumbnail there. You'll realize why it's like perfect symmetry. I don't know how these guys do it.
Yeah, and don't forget he fought lots too, right? So it's amazing that he still kept the facial structure pretty decent. And he just retired from the UFC. He's working with ESPN, and he's just an all around great guy. Just did a huge move. So he's going to be on the show next week, which is fantastic. And don't forget our dear friend and guest of the show, Cyril Gann, is fighting this weekend in the UFC. So we're wishing him all the luck in the world. And hey, he's from Paris, France, so we can't you know. Enough said. Enough said. France. Yeah, vive la France.
Thank you to our sponsor, Crystal Glass. If you have any glass problems, any glass needs, just be sure to call
310 Glass.
310 Glass.
Or go to crystalglass.ca, everybody.
Figure it out.
They'll
help you out. Next week, Alan, Euro Cup predictions.
France looks shaky. Italy looks good, but Italy hasn't played anybody yet. No. Belgium, it's different now. There's teams. There's a bunch of teams that can win now, right? Germany has been reincarnated.
Yeah, that was crazy,
right? So there's a lot of stuff going on. Croatia plays tomorrow, outside shot to go to the next round. They're a middle of the pack team now. Unfortunately, my Croatians are a middle of the, I hate to say that out loud, but they're a middle of the pack team. They better figure that out for future reference. But it's weird now. It's to see Portugal get tuned, right? That's probably the right terminology. Was kind of surprising.
Well, I think that Portugal-France game will be that will show something.
Yeah, it'll definitely show something.
What a group that was! Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine waking up and you're in that group going, oh my god, this is
and Hungary, who has proven themselves. I mean, there was 0-0 Portugal until the 89th minute.
That's right.
So you're like, well, that shouldn't be happening. And then they draw France, which is crazy.
I got that statement texted to me more times during the Euro Cup than any other time. This shouldn't be happening.
No.
People are texting me, this shouldn't be happening. And I'm like, this should not be happening.
It's been a weird one. It's been a weird one.
It has.
Well, I think we covered it.
People out there, Dan Hardy is special.
Yes.
These are people that Jesse brought up on the show before. Robin Black is special.
Yeah.
They see things differently. Dan Hardy sees things differently. Laval St. Germain sees things differently. Yeah. These guests that we have on our show that you see, Kelly Rudy, sees things differently. These are people that see things when we talk to them on the show, you can see there's something so different about the way they perceive things. And that Louis DeBrusque sees things differently. And these are all these guests that we've had on our show that just kind of see things in a different way. And that's what we bring you on the Me and Jesse podcast every week on Mondays at 5 p.m. Mountain, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, and in England, midnight.
You can always find it on youtube.com/meandjesse and then facebook.com/meandjesse as well. Be sure to like and subscribe to both of those networks. It helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
Be sure to like, comment, and share on this because we like that too, and it helps us. And
let's go, everybody. Let's go. This ain't gonna stop. We are gonna kick some ass. We're gonna keep kicking ass. We're gonna keep bringing it to you every week, and it's not gonna stop. So keep that in mind. We want you to share this. Yeah. You should share it. You should tell everybody about our podcast. And listen, the summer's coming. The guests are going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
This has been the Me and Jesse podcast. That's Mark. I'm Jesse. The most exciting, the most important 60 minutes you spent on the internet this week. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Tell them.
We'll see you next time.
Tell them, Jesse.
When we're joined by Alan Juban right here on Me and Jesse podcast.
Thanks for watching the Me and Jesse podcast. Follow us at facebook.com/meandjesse. Thanks for watching the Me and Jesse podcast. Follow us at facebook.com/meandjesse.